Hello.
Hi, how are you? And welcome to Trek Tonight. This is our 7th episode in which we will be reviewing episode 4 of Strange New Worlds, Memento Mori. When we're just up front, Angela says howdy. Howdy, Angela.
Thank you. Hello.
Yep. And Keith Jacobson says hi.
Hello.
Our favorite people, our regular chatters with us. This show I just keep enjoying this show. I don't know what more to say than that. I could make a very bold statement, which will probably have a bunch of people screaming at me, but it may be one of my top favorite shows since TOS.
I would agree. It takes everything I love about TOS,
right?
But just like, hello, Eric.
Here's Eric and Craig Robinson.
Hey
guys. Oh, and we've got Joe Townsell here as well tonight. This is fantastic. All the gang is here. Yes, and we're going to get to that, Joe, because that's how I saw this episode, as a classic submarine, hide and seek kind of thing. Made me think of Balance of
Terror.
Thank you. The episode I can never remember the title of. Oh, look at this. Eric says, my oldest son said it best. It feels like coming home.
I agree. It does. It has it has all the stuff we loved about the old original the original Star Trek, those old scientists, as Commander Ransom would say. But it also, there's a level of sophistication that the old show didn't have. And that's not a criticism of the old show. The old show was episodic TV done in the late 1960s on a major network. So they were constrained.
Yeah.
Every episode was pretty much, that was it. Very, very few times did anything come back in the way they do in more modern TV.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like characters are having emotional arcs that aren't the focus of the show. They are they're interwoven into the show.
Right.
It's like this is what I've used this analogy in terms of dating crazy people. It's like dating a crazy person is like eating a bowl of hot sauce. While a little bit of hot sauce, you're like, what's that? That's kind of interesting.
Right.
But nobody wants to eat a bowl of hot sauce. So the stories aren't necessarily strictly about the emotional journey of these characters, but that is woven into the show.
Yes, quite nicely, I think, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
I just want to jump in. Keith makes a bolder statement than mine.
Ooh.
In 4 episodes, this has become my favorite version of Trek. Never thought anything could knock TOS out of that spot. That's a bold remark.
It is a bold statement, and we salute you.
Yeah, yes, in your bravery, because I posted something on, I'm not going to say who it is, on another Facebook group that we'll just say was dedicated to the old ways, and didn't realize by accident where I had posted it. And about 5 people jumped on me, and then the administrator took my post off.
Well, listen, you can't keep
And
everybody.
all I was doing was asking. I did it on our page. But,
Yeah.
What of all the new characters
Yeah.
that are on the show, which is your favorite? I don't watch it. That garbage. Okay.
Why? Shut up. Just shut up.
Exactly. Well, they can have their own little space.
They can have their own thing, but don't
and that'll be fine. That's fine. I was in the wrong place, clearly.
Well, you
wandered into the wrong part of town. I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just as a note, my good friend Dianna Lora, who is a fantastic person. She works in the video game industry. She's currently sort of at an event which we cannot specify. And so I think there might be, and she's way out on the West Coast right now, so I think there might have been a miscommunication about the time, the start. Yes, English is my first language. Anyway, about when we were starting, if she realize, we will bring her back. She's a lovely person. I met her from D&D in Brooklyn.
Don't oversell it, Leo.
Yeah, and she threw great parties. She made amazing guacamole.
There you go.
Terrific singer and a lovely, lovely person.
All fine reasons to know her. And I was looking forward to meeting her, but that's fine. We'll meet her later at a different time.
Yes. So before we could continue to just heap praise on this episode without giving any details, we could start. Cliff Diamond, called me a lovely person. Well, I think we both know why. Cliff is a lovely person. I'm sure.
Yes, he is.
Yes.
One of our oldest friends.
Oldest friends and guest on the show, friend of the show,
and guest on the show. Yes, previous guest, and it was a really good episode too.
It was a very good episode.
We're going to have him back again. He had a scheduling conflict, so we had to move him back a little bit, but he'll be here later at the end, near the end of June.
Okay. So what we have our segment where we're showing off some old memorabilia.
Yes.
And why don't we do that front?
Sure. I have your item. Do you want to talk a little bit before we start about what it is, or
these are trading cards from Star Trek: The Motion Picture,
right?
And I don't remember when. I mean, obviously, I bought them way back in the day,
right?
And it feels like about a pack's worth, and I uncovered them while going through things.
You chewed the really stale gum.
Yeah, the gum is gone. The gum's on. If I tried to chew that gum now, they weren't in the wrapper; they were loose. I think that gum would be a deadly weapon at this point.
You could use it to replace the Lurpa. Okay. Exactly. All right. Let's run your clip, Leo.
All right.
Sort of a Ken Burns kind of thing here.
Get to see those often maligned next generation costumes. There's the Enterprise.
There's the Enterprise from Astern.
There's Spock.
Savage Spock from the beginning of the movie. That's a really bizarre card to have.
Yeah, that
was one of the most disturbing parts of that movie.
It was. There's the bridge.
There's
the boy returning with his 1970s swinger beard.
Yep.
And there's Aaliyah and Decker. Nice shot of the Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this needs some Ken Burns type movie. There's Decker.
It needed music, but I didn't have time today to do. Now that guy, where?
I think they do these shots. They'll do these big master shots. I don't remember exactly where that guy was.
Yeah, I don't
need big crowd shots, and they have aliens in it. And because I had movie money, they weren't scraping by and going through dumpsters to make props and so on for the old show. They would do that. I do not know the name of that alien. If any of our viewers do,
please that would be great.
But I trading cards are still a thing, but those are printed on the card stock. They're not shiny. They're still in relatively good condition, I would say.
Neat.
And if I didn't photograph this, but if you got all of them, you put them together, it would create like a picture, like it was a puzzle.
Oh, how cool!
Like you would lay it in, there would be an edge. So if you got all of them, you put them out, and it would be, I think it might have been a group photo of the cast or the Enterprise. Those are my two guesses.
Ah, gotcha. Neat. I didn't really have anything classic, but I was really happy that this came finally. This is the Wand Company tricorder, communicator, which is the one that Cliff Diamond, if you saw that episode, was showing off, and it pairs with your phone. The only trouble I'm having with it is getting the volume to be very loud. But here we go. But yeah, it flips open, just makes the chirp.
Yeah.
And then the little blue button here would be blinking if I had it paired with my phone, and then I could answer my phone from the communicator.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's mine. I didn't have a lot. I was kind of busy at my day job.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of time to fish around and get some stuff, but I have a few things I want to bring down from upstairs for the show for next week. So
okay, very cool. Well, why don't we jump into the episode?
Right, exactly.
All right.
Yeah, we'll save fan of the week for the end of the show.
Yes. Keep everybody in suspense.
Yes.
I did break down, which is much longer than it needs to be. So I'll try to hit the main points.
Okay.
This is, by the way, I think the longest cold open they've done. It was about 10.5 minutes.
Yes. I think so, right.
And going with the current theme, a different actor or different character is doing a log at the beginning. And this was Chief Lieutenant Lan Language,
right,
is the security officer, and she's doing her log, and they're delivering an atmospheric upgrade to Finibus 3. And we also learned that it is Starfleet Remembrance Day. And I don't know if fans have seen these pictures online, these little round buttons with the name of a ship, and it has the UFP symbol in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
This is a day they do where you remember your comrades who you maybe lost, ships you served on. Pike is wearing a Discovery one. Spock is apparently wearing a Congo one, and I did not get the breakdown that you can find those details online, but each of them are for a ship that you've served on, and it's also you see everybody walking through the halls and they're talking to, they're like, hey, point at each other, and then you see Lan, who's looking at a box of mementos for herself, and there's the SS Puget Sound. I love the thought of Remembrance Day.
Yeah, Keith says, I love the thought of Remembrance Day. I do too.
I do too. It's very much that naval tradition sort of idea. So, but she has the pin, but she doesn't put it on. And then she goes to the bridge, and she's, number one is like, why aren't you wearing your pin? She said, well, I just didn't want to wear it.
Yeah.
You could tell that number one's like a little concerned. She's like, I don't need to have somebody fix me because I'm not broken, which is something somebody who's completely okay would say. And then you've got Hammer and Ahora walking down the corridor. She's doing her rotation in engineering, and he's kind of giving her the business. He said, well, what does this thing do? And she said, well, it's an air purifier. He's like, oh, cadets, they never do the reading. And she's like, well, actually, she just trots out all the details about who invented this and what it is. And basically, and it purifies the air. He's like, all right, that's right, harder. He's really giving her a hard time. And she's like, well, challenge accepted. So then they arrive at the colony, and there's no hails. They're trying to go. Turns out the communication satellite has been destroyed, or it's gone.
Right.
And so Pike is like, well, that's peculiar. So he sends down number one and some other personnel for a landing party. And they land down in the colony, and it's nighttime, and there's like fires, and it's spooky, and they eventually find a very, very horror movie, like what's going on, life signs, and they find this area where it's like all these, it looks like bodies were dragged because these streaks of blood on the ground, and there's a dog, somebody's left there for some reason. I really to scare the crew who comes down, because the guy's like,
I thought it was funny that they're all chuckling about that, basically out of nervousness.
Yeah.
And Lan's like, it's not funny.
Yeah. So the ever jovial, although she has good reason to be the way she is, as we
yes, she does. And I want to comment on her when we start talking about giving our opinions, because I was hoping for an episode like this to give her a little more than the 2 dimensions that she's had so far in the show.
I agree. So then it's a ship in orbit, and they're like, raise shields, and then they realize like, oh no, it's they get hailed by them, and it's the colony.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right. He's like, we got attacked. We don't know what happened. He's, well, we'll beam you over. He's, well, we can't, because it's a transport ship for radioactive material.
Right.
So it's shielded against transporters. And so, all right, we're going to they basically do a space dock, like this telescopic walkway.
I'm surprised we've never seen before.
Well, I didn't think they had the budget in other, and usually people beam, but it's important that they don't beam for the story.
Right.
And they're getting, and everybody's all like just slogging on the ship, and they're in terrible shape. And, Lan is talking to this little girl, and she's like, oh, they're monsters. And, she's like, well, what happened? What did you see? And she does stuff. And Lan's, and I'm going to spoil this, her Gorn sense is going off.
Yeah.
And then she's like, Lan's at the bridge, the shields. So first she's like, scan for this sort of anomaly. And they do like, there's something on this thing. And they're like, she's like, raise shields immediately. And they can't, because they're still docked to the ship. And then this ship shows out of nowhere and just blows up the cargo ship and attacks the Enterprise.
Yeah.
And Lan is like, it's the Gorn. And then we go to the credits.
Yeah, it was a really long. What is Cliff saying here? Well, they don't have that dock anymore. They did.
Doomsday.
Yeah, that took me a second. That's
so
that's from, what is that from? That's from
Doomsday Machine.
It's from the Doomsday Machine. Yeah.
It was, but not anymore.
Not anymore.
So clicking sound like the aliens from TNG Schisms, related species, perhaps. Maybe. Possibly. But I like the idea that their language it's just not like weird hissing. The idea that, because they're not an animal species, they just look like Earth animals, but they're an intelligent spacefaring, capable species. But they, their language obviously is very different, as it would be.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Because I'm thinking, when we saw the Gorn in Arena, thank you. He did. Oh, but he only talked to Kirk through the translator.
Yeah, only through the universal translator sort of puts a dramatic spin on the vocalization. Yeah, it wasn't like, I will tell you, Captain. It wasn't like an uninflected computer. No. It was like,
Captain. Yeah.
Be quick and merciful. Wearing that go-go tunic.
Yeah. I gotta say, I do wonder how the Gorn made it to space. If you're just thinking of that guy now, and even the Gorn that was in
Enterprise.
Well,
he was a lot quicker. He was
more agile, but he was still very much a beast of sorts. I mean, he wasn't. I just always, I don't know.
I mean, it's just they evolved, and they were able. Clearly, they're capable. They seem bestial to us because they remind us of, Earth lizards.
Speaking of which,
they were speaking.
Craig Lubin says they were speaking parcel tongue.
Yeah, that's about right. Seems good. That tracks. I like the idea that their language is completely alien to us.
John Weber is here tonight.
Oh.
Our dear friend John, and he says Jurassic Gorn.
Yeah, well, no, you're not wrong there. And obviously, the Gorn of Arena was a guy in a suit out in the desert who was probably sweating, losing have his body weight in moisture. That had to be a super uncomfortable costume to wear in the desert of California.
One would think, yeah.
So
the guy went in there. He weighed 250 pounds. He came out. He was 190.
There you go. Well, it's a whole program.
That became a whole trend in California until about 1971. Yeah. You throw a Gorn costume on, you go out in the desert, and
too many people just passed out.
Drop weight like that.
Yeah, it was it was effective, but you had to be careful because you could get badly hurt. Yeah. Anyway, this was a great cold open because a lot of stuff happened, moved along. They had a landing party. They came back up. It was all very there wasn't a lot of and I'm glad they didn't stay on the planet because that's a classic thing. We've seen they've done that early in the second episode with the Illyrians.
Oh, this was a classic submarine.
Oh yeah,
war picture in a way. I mean, that's what it made me think of. Made me think of that. Did make me think a little bit of Balance of Terror because it was a similar idea of trying to outsmart somebody and being blind and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, very much. Both those episodes are this is very reminiscent of that episode,
right?
In a good way. But they put
Joe says he thought we might see a glimpse of a Gorn during Lan's mind melt flashback. Kudos that they resisted the temptation to reveal too early. And I agree with you there, Joe. I'm actually really glad we didn't see a Gorn.
Yeah, I am too.
Because I think that should be our season finale payoff, if we even get it then.
Yeah, if we get it then. But the idea that they're a boogeyman, the rumors and so on. Like I said, I felt like to set it up. It's like the stakes are high, Enterprise is in peril, what's going on.
Oh, and it really gets messed up, and you see it messed up.
Yeah,
I don't want to jump all the way to the end, but I don't know what other show we were talking about. Some other show. Oh, it may have been Voyager, where the ship goes through all this stuff, but always seems to look nice and shiny every week.
Yeah,
and I know that Voyager did do that Year from Hell thing where they made the ship look like a disaster. But I know some people have criticized it for the ship didn't get beat up enough on this lost out in space where nobody can fix it. But I really thought it was cool at the end of this episode. Yeah, you got to see all the damage as the ship flew off.
Yeah, I did, and also people got bloody and dirty as we'll see.
Right.
So, like I said, a solid opening, and I quite enjoyed it. So now, when we come back from the credits, Lan wakes up in the corridor outside sickbay, and there's Nurse Chapel who's dragging some other injured crewmen, and she's like, "Are you okay?" Like this, obviously a very traumatic. Like this is like a little bit like MASH, and that it's like that sort of battle surgery, and she's coming out of being knocked unconscious, and then number one orders her to the bridge because number one, as we find out, has been injured, but she's very much like, they need you on the bridge, the score, so do that. And this Gorn ship is kicking the Enterprise's ass because they cannot raise shields. Sisters are coming down all over the ship. See, what is John?
As you saying that, I saw John commented it was so scary that most of the fight the Enterprise had no shields.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lan says, "Listen, the Gorn, that's what they do. They just knock you out. They make you waste your resources, and then they pounce. And we need to get out of here. We need to get out of here right now." And they can't because they've lost warp. The impulse engines are at like half speed.
Right.
So they decide there's a brown dwarf, a type of star in the system, and we can hide in there. But much like going to the Mutara Nebula, it will affect sensors, it'll affect weapons, it'll affect shields, all this stuff. But they'll be hidden. So they decide to do that.
Right. Even though but with the added problem of being right close to a black hole.
Yes.
And the compression of the dwarf star.
Yeah.
The more they go into it, the higher the pressure will be.
Yeah, the gravity increases.
Right. So the idea that, the Enterprise could just get crushed like a tin can in there.
Absolutely. It is kind of like hiding in a burning house.
Yeah.
Now go back to the cargo bay. Hammer has been injured during this, and they're down in the cargo bay. And I wish I watched the episode twice, and it was some sort of cooling unit. It was like, I'm not exactly. There was this big piece of equipment that got damaged, and if it was not repaired,
with a giant snowflake on the end of it.
Well, that was the thing that crushed him. I assume that the snowflake. I assume that's some sort of cryoponic, stuff that you have to keep cold.
But is that like the universal idiot symbol for this is cold?
Keep this cold. Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, I thought that was a very odd.
It was, but it was.
I'm not. Just me. It made me laugh because it's like, what the hell is that thing with a giant?
I don't know exactly what it is, but I assume it's something that it's containing something that needs to be kept at sub-zero temperatures.
Right. Or it's a bunch of snowflakes from the 21st century that have been cryogenically stored in there.
Well, listen, each snowflake is unique. So
it is. At any rate, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
His hand is all messed up. That was a short scene. This is cold. Now the sick bay, they're overwhelmed because there's a lack of medical supplies. Number one stumbles in, and I thought you said you were all right. She said, "Well, I was mistaken," or something to that effect.
Yeah. And
because they can't use the surgical bay because systems are down all over the ship.
Right.
And Benga says that you have expertise in archaeological surgery.
Yeah.
Which is basically kind of surgery we do now, where you sew people up with a needle and thread. That is, things are going bad because there are a lot of injured people. Also, as we find out, the mother and daughter, because there was the little girl and her mom, who were refugees from the colony, were killed in the attack.
Right.
So, and that's really, Lan is, not happy about that. Not that he tends to not be happy about a lot of things.
Well, no, that's true. But.
Yeah. So they have while they're hiding, they're having the, captain's table. They're all in that ready room where they're discussing it. They kind of systems are down, transporters are down because they can't just beam Hammer and Ahora out of the cargo bay. He said, "Well, we'll send some people to try to get you out." And because of the damage, they only have one photon torpedo left, and because of the weird properties of being inside the brown dwarf, there's no way they can lock. They have no tracking, so it would probably just go wild, as Spock points out.
Right. Keith says the Star Trek Adventures GM and me makes note of a new focus: archaeological surgery.
That's nice. I like that.
It is true.
Modifius, get right on that.
Yeah, get on that. Yes.
So,
core book.
So, Gonzalo, or Erica, our chief helmsman, says, "What are we supposed to do? Throw luggage at them?"
Yeah, I love that line. I thought that was great.
He's kind of, he's like, "Listen, all right, we got to be creative, be brave, all this stuff." And Lan is now functioning as she's acting number one because
Una
UNA. Lan she's having a little bit of PTSD because she sees this image of this young man standing behind Pike, and she's like, the Gorn are evil. They're not supernatural, but they are monsters, and so he talks with her. He says, "Well, listen, it's not just about giving orders." And I know she's like, "I don't care who likes me." He's like, "I understand that. You're very honest, you're very forthright. But the difference between success or defeat and victory is sometimes your attitude, like hope and belief, which is a true thing. Like if your leaders are like, well, we're fucked, you're kind of like, well, I guess we are. Whereas if you say, listen, I believe in all of you, you're all the best Starfleet has to offer.
Right.
And you come up with a solution.
Right.
So in others is best.
Let me jump this in here because Joe makes an interesting comment just about this scene. Hammer and Ahora trapped in the cargo bay was reminiscent of Crusher and LaForge in Disaster, but very effective in character building.
It was.
And you are so right, Joe, because this was my next favorite part of this episode was the development of the relationship between Hammer and Ahora and seeing so much more of these great characters. I don't know. That was just me. I
like seeing. I mean, certain characters kind of tend to pair up on these sorts of shows, but I liked her and Hammer working together, and also like he is super grumpy. He's like it's a bit of that McCoy sort of like surliness.
Right.
You know, not exactly, but reminiscent. Let's say.
Yeah.
And so he's like, he needs her to repair this thing, and she's like, okay, you're gonna have to walk me through it. And he's like, I'm not really much of a team player. She's like, well, I'm the only one with two good hands, so we kind of have to do it.
Yeah.
I did like that. Now another great line, because I was thinking, Lance says, I won't lie to the crew. He said, well, the best miracles are born from truth.
Yeah.
Is like, again, he was dropping all these delicious captain, pearls of.
He was doing the captain bit really well this week, I think.
I would have followed him.
And he got the inspiring speech.
Yeah.
And got the little morsels of wisdom. It's all there.
He was fast becoming my favorite Starfleet captain.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He's one of mine. Yeah.
So they go back to the bridge, and because of a certain feature in the navigational array, which they're able to track the Gorn ship using this particular. It's something to do with the Coriolis effect of the gas, the displacement of the gas.
Right.
And it was great because I'm like, as I wrote in my notes, I was like, Spock figures out how to track the Gorn. Science.
Right.
And then they were like, well, it's coming towards it. And again, very much like that something. And they put up the image. It's like the Enterprise is here. It is like,
yeah.
Like, are they going to hit us? And Ortegas is like, should I prepare to engage? He's like, just hold on. And they pass by. And they're like, oh, they can't see us.
Yeah.
So they're like, damn, And by the way, I wrote down the name. I have to put on my glasses because.
What's that? The name of what, Liam?
There's a new crew member on the bridge. You could tell.
Oh yeah.
I wrote his name down, and now I'm looking for my glasses.
Come on, somebody out there.
Next 5.
What's the name of the new guy on the bridge?
His name is Zinga, I believe, or Zinga.
Okay.
And I may have misspelled that because they didn't write it down. Was it like? I'm going to put on my glasses so I can read my notes. So they decided, like, hey, if we position our space gas even better than swamp gas.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I am allergic to Retinex 5. Dr. Mbenga gifted me these from Amazon.
Antiques.
So they decided to drop. They were like, if we just position ourselves above the Gorn ship and open the bay, the torpedo will fall out and hit it, and we don't have to. And they were like, oh, that's a great thing. And it does. It works, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, and again, reminding me of these submarine movies because it basically felt like they were dropping a depth charge.
Absolutely.
It was really cool.
It was like
perfect. And a great solution to that issue, that problem. Yeah.
So destroys the Gorn, and everybody's like, the music is hopeful, and everybody's like, oh, everybody's visibly relieved until 3 more Gorn ships show up on Spock's improvised sensor setup, and they're like, and one of them, is pointed out by Ortega, is like, why is one of those ships much bigger than the other 2? They're 2 more like the one that was hunting it, and they decide Oh yeah, they've sacrificed one ship to find them.
Yeah.
Which is very much in their wheelhouse.
Yeah, which was an interesting tidbit about the way the Gorn things.
So they decide to go deeper into the brown dwarf,
Mm-hmm.
and Spock is like, "That's really dangerous," and then Pike's like, "Yep, that's what we're gonna do."
Yeah.
Ortega's like, "Did our science officer just say that was more dangerous?" He's like, "If it's dangerous for us, it's dangerous for them too." So she's like, "Okay, we'll go into the 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 ball of deadly space gas or something to that effect."
Yeah.
And you can tell, like, Pike, they got to Pike, who's kind of like, "Come on, man!" Like he has a rare sort of like, "I didn't need to hear that" sort of look on his face, but she didn't see it, so it's fine.
Here, Joe says the use of actual science concepts in this episode demanded very few lines of dialogue and lent so much to the plausibility. Very little technobabble as well.
It's true,
and you are right, Joe. And if you, isn't it in this episode that somebody says to Spock, "Can you say it in English?" I think it's Leon.
Well, he says something in like an over the complicated way. He says, "Can't you ever say anything in plain English?"
Right. Yeah.
So
but you're right. You're right on the money there, Joe. There was not a lot of just malarkey.
It wasn't. We have to reverse the polarity of the Hinneman inductors, or some other nonsense. It was the science was fairly accurate, I would say, for a show about an impossible ship doing impossible things.
Well, and again, so you get to this point where they're going deeper, and I don't know that I've ever heard this. The ship is creaking.
Yeah.
From the pressure on the outside, and the temperature outside is too much for the air conditioning system to compensate.
Yeah,
the environmental system to compensate for. But again, there's that old submarine movie. You've got the ship being, having to descend. I think somebody makes that. Oh, she does. Ortega says, "Dive, dive, dive."
Yeah.
Yeah. Craig Lubin with our science tip of the day. It's actually a very dense hyperfluid that actually occurs around some suns.
There we go. It has the Craig Lubin seal of approval.
So, it does have the Craig, the Lubin technology seal of approval.
So very cool. It did the creaking. It really, so many times. It's funny because I was thinking about Next Gen, and let me say right up front, I love Next Gen. There's an overabundance of lovely Star Trek in Next Gen.
Oh yeah.
But a lot of times when the ship's in danger, it never, like, stuff doesn't, occasionally something explodes, but it doesn't feel like the ship is breaking apart. Like, you very rarely hear creaking. It feels like everybody keeps clean. Nobody's uniform. Very rarely does anybody's uniform get dirty,
right?
Or does something happen like where you feel like something collapses. It's a lot of lights, and I understand the constraints of a TV show, a weekly TV show in syndication.
Right.
They don't want to blow up their sets, and I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But this really felt like the Enterprise was in genuine danger, and even though I rationally know there are more episodes, Enterprise will not blow up, but it still felt very like, oh, they're in it now.
Yeah.
So that's the trick. I mean, so many people. A friend of mine was talking about, and I'll briefly make this on the debris on the bridge. I love the debris on the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Bring it on. Was talking about the first. It was Avengers Infinity War, which ended on a very grim note. And he's like, "Yeah, it didn't affect me at all because I know they're gonna be back for more movies." I'm like, I mean, how can you watch any movie? One, that means you can't ever rewatch a movie because you know what's gonna happen. And it's like, the point is not that, they're like, obviously Spider-Man they're not gonna kill off Spider-Man permanently in this movie. Because he's coming back for more movies and so on. But you can still be affected by the emotional story.
Yeah.
So everybody acts like they're too smart, and then
hey, listen. I don't care how many times I've seen it. When that laser beam is heading towards Sean Connery's crotch in Goldfinger, it makes me nervous.
As well, it should. Well, it should. All right. So getting back to Star Trek, what this show is actually about.
Yes.
So then we go back to the sickbay. Number one's getting sewed up, old school style.
Right.
And and it's it looks painful, and I'm sure it is. But she's pretty tough. Then we go back to the cargo.
I don't know what this means, Angela.
Your friend is a sociopath. He is absolutely. I'm not going to name him here. You know him, Angela. You've met him. He is a sociopath. Fortunately, not the killy type. Crotch laser. Thank you, John Weber.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to talk Goldfinger.
Yeah.
Ahura is trying to fix things, and Hammer is giving her like advice, but he's not a real rah kind of guy. Like,
right.
She's trying to do stuff. She's like, no, you have to do this. You have to use both hands, which is something you could have said initially, but he's one of those guys. And I'm not sure if it's here or later on. They're trying to figure it out. She's like, well, some of the rods in this device, if cold, that means they're damaged.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And he's like, put your hands over it, so you can see. And she puts her hand on one. He's like, she's that's hot. He's like, I told you to put your hands over it, not on it. And that's true, but it's also like not really helpful in the moment. But that's his whole grumpy demeanor. But I like seeing them work together and finding a way to work together.
Yes. And then, of course, ultimately, when you get to the episode, I mean, they're pretty tight by the time you get to the episode.
Yeah, they do. They both of them.
Cliff just said, I mean, he says here, was it just me, or did this feel much more than an hour? It felt like a full-length film. And John jumps in and says 100%. I've got to say, I agree with this, because when we were watching Picard, I felt like those episodes was like, oh, it's over now.
Yeah.
But this, I felt like I got a full meal.
It was a full meal. There were a lot of scenes that cut between a lot of different scenes. And everybody had their own. There's the stuff on the bridge. There was the stuff at sickbay. There was the stuff in the cargo bay. So we had 3 storylines,
right.
And the stakes were high. It wasn't like we have to like a TNG episode. We have to negotiate with the Blablarians, and it's a very high diplomat. It was like, me and Geordi and Data are trying to figure out how to build, a taco machine, or one of their weird little side projects, So, not that they ever did that, although I'd watch that episode. So now it's discovered that lower decks are being compromised. And so Pike orders an evacuation, and there's like, listen, basically both Leanna and Spock say, if we don't seal the bulkheads now, we're going to lose a lot more of the ship. And he orders the end, and we see the new and improved Mr. Kyle running down the corridor, and there's sparks. And he sees another guy, and he picks him up, and he's dragging him towards the bulk. The doors are closing, and they get close, and the guy's been injured, and he pushes Kyle through. And you see him, like, the doors close, and just before you see him, like, an explosion happen. But Mr. Kyle is safe for the Mr. Kyle fans in our audience. And I was like, they're not going to kill off Mr. Kyle. You could. I mean, I guess you couldn't if you want on canon, because he shows up later on TOS. But there was a lot of loss in this episode, and it felt like it affected people.
Yeah. Now let me jump back to Joe said here, not having to conform to standard TV commercial segment lengths and episode duration ensures each story is the length it needs to be to tell the story.
That is true. Although if you watch this, you notice there are breaks, there's a quick black between sometimes portions of the show.
Right.
and it's built. Wait, damn it! I thought I missed an episode. I want a taco machine.
Yeah. Sorry, Keith. That's what we call headcanon.
That's headcanon.
Yeah. And then John says, Mr. Kyle's meet cute gets blasted. No.
No. What were we saying?
I have no idea.
It is cut together. If you watch Strange New Worlds, and this is the same for Discovery and Picard, is they are cut, and you can see where they could put commercials in. There's like these little
Oh yeah, no, they are cut. Yeah.
But it doesn't, but it, in no way.
Joe makes a point, which is that, maybe they're not at a network prescribed time interval in order to get so many commercials into an episode.
No, I don't think they are, because
I think they do it for a dramatic sense and also for a familiarity to the idea of watching a regular television show.
True. And I will say that it's like that cold open was long. True. There's breaks come at the right time instead of every 8.65, 6.9.
And I are on the same
6.75 minutes of screen time.
What's the start date?
Yada yada yada. Anyway, more of a meat kill. Thank you, Craig Lubin, for that bon mot. But that cold open was 10.5 minutes, which is the longest I've ever seen for a cold open. Because they're usually, I feel like they're about 5 or 6 minutes long, maybe. English, a horrible language. I don't recommend it. And we're stuck with it until the universal translators show up.
Right. Yeah. And then we can
even though so we like indistinct mumbling.
Tense music.
It's music. So they're compromised, and you could see. And Pike says, "How many were they lost one crew member, presumably, which is the one that pushed Mr. Kyle through the door." And when they say it, and you could see it hit Pike, it hits him hard.
Yeah.
In a way that sometimes death on a TV show like Star Trek sometimes doesn't have quite the same. I'm not saying 100%, but sometimes they're like, Redshirt gets beamed down and gets murdered, and Kirk's upset in the moment, but you don't feel like it has any weight.
Right.
Well,
I don't want to get a whole bunch of Star Wars fans pissed off at me, but I actually always felt in The New Hope there was not. Now I know that movie moved.
Yeah.
But I mean, Ben Kenobi dies. You've got all of 30 seconds of Luke being sad about it, and the next thing he's blasting TIE fighters, and cheering about it. I mean, there was very little. A lot of people died in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Especially the first one, The New Hope, and it just seemed like, okay, we're done with that. Let's move on.
I would say the pace of the film, he was upset about Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, but it sort of resolved. He was like, I want to become a Jedi, not like my father. Right. Okay. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Let's not go.
Joe Townsend made a comment back on talking about commercial breaks. Paramount Plus needs building in some commercial breaks for cheapskates like me who don't want to pay for the premium plan.
I'm sure they will. Joe. So
where were we?
Now we're so like I said, Pike gets hit hard by the loss of that crew member, and everybody seems affected by, which again would have to be like if you worked in an office and then so you find out Bill from accounting he was killed by a car
right
to work, you'd be like, fuck,
yeah,
what the hell, or
you'd be like, wow, that guy was a douche.
Yeah.
No, seriously, no, you'd be upset.
And because of where they are in the brown dwarf, a Gorn ship, one of the smaller Gorn ships that's trying to find them, gets caught up in the gravitational field, and you're like,
and it's like a tin can just gets crushed.
It's beautiful. It was.
Joe has a question.
Yes,
and this is a good question. Why is Ortega's wearing a red shirt? Should she not be in gold? Right, she's driving the ship.
I've wondered that myself. I'm not sure if that is a producer's choice, or like they were like, we don't want to have too many gold shirts because it's basically
there's a lot of red shirts on that bridge.
There are.
And I wonder if part of it is because of the way that set looks. When you do a wide shot of the bridge, Pike is really the only one in gold, which makes him stand out.
Yeah, and also he and number one, who isn't always on the grid.
Number one, right.
And I think they want to. I mean, we've seen people in gold tunics walking around the ship.
Right.
That's a good question. Maybe the producers can, maybe we'll tweet at the.
Now, if anybody knows or can find out why she's wearing red instead of gold, let us know, because we'll do a little research on it.
I've wondered that myself, but it just might be that she looks better in red, which is sometimes. Okay, so back in sick bay, number one needs surgery, but they're going to give her surgery and they're going to have to knock her out. And she's got a piece of debris lodged in her abdomen.
Right.
And they're like, well, it's going to be septic. We're going to get sepsis if we leave it in. And she's like, we're going to have to do the surgery. We're going to have to knock you out. And she's kind of like, I don't know. And, she's like, well.
Knock out my sinuses.
Yeah. She says, well, what'll happen if I say no? And Chaplin says, well, it'll be really painful. It'll be, people describe it as like giving birth out of your mouth. And
that was bizarre.
And she's like, what kind of person says that?
Yeah, it was me.
A fair question. And she's like, well, me. She's.
I'm really enjoying Chapel. I gotta say,
I'm loving the new Chapel. She's she's upfront and kind of funny, a little sassy, and maybe that's her way of coping. And she's also,
but she's still, as accomplished as she is, though, she still has a freshness to her that's like, this is definitely her at a younger age.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, she has a lot of that confidence of youth.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, we have enough plasma to do your surgery. And then they're like, Chapel gets called over by one of the other med techs or doctors. They're like, nurse, we need plasma. She's like, well, we're out. And then number one says, give her my plasma. They're like, are you sure? Because you'll die if we don't operate. And she's like, she's like, well, yep, I'm serious. So we go back up to the bridge now, where the black hole is absorbing the brown dwarf, all the plasma, all the the hydrogen and so on from the star. So the area where they can comfortably hide is disappearing.
Yes.
And they're trying to say, well, what are you going to do? So Lan suggests that a shuttlecraft could go out, check out what's going on, see if they're still there, waiting outside. Because they're like, if we go out and the ships are there, they'll be on us like white on rice, as they said, as they used to say. I don't know if that's racist. I hope not. I don't know anymore. I don't. So Spock says, to put it in plain English, you need backup. So I'll go with you.
Right.
And Pike says, take the Galileo and be careful. I
thought that was interesting.
I love it. And I love that they're using the Galileo. There are probably about four. I think there were about 4 shuttlecraft on a starship.
A Constitution class,
yeah. And a nice callback. Why not?
Yeah.
You could call it fan service. I was happy to hear there was Galileo.
I don't think that's of course, I guess I'm a fan being served, but I think that's cool. It's stuff out of the universe.
I think if they didn't, if they said take the Da Vinci, people were like, "What happened to Galileo?"
No, what happened to Galileo? Yeah, I know.
All right, so they go out and they see.
We're getting an hate mail.
Well,
whatever. Anyway,
so bring it on. You know what our email is.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. Our email's listed at the beginning and the close of the show.
Yes. So they go up and they see the coast is indeed not clear. So Lan says, well, Vulcans, do a Vulcan mind meld on me. Yeah. Because there might be something I can't remember. And she keeps seeing this image of this young man throughout the episode.
Yeah, she keeps having visions of this guy.
And Spock's comment is mind meld is not a shortcut through mental trauma, which is, I think, a pretty accurate description, but it was a good idea.
Yeah.
Keith was asking, No love for the Copernicus.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe another episode. So Spock does the mind meld, my mind to your mind, classic. And they're back on this breeding planet where she was as a young girl. And then she finds the young man who it turns out is her brother.
Right.
And he hands her this book. This thing is he's figured out because the Gorn ships are flashing lights at each other. Like, why are they scanning each other? What's they're like? I don't know.
Yeah, but it turns out it's communication.
It's communications.
Yeah.
And he gives her this book, and now this is unlocking all her memories of basically how to create a signal. So they modify the phaser array to shoot light, non-destructive light. So they signaled a large ship saying that the smaller ship has been boarded and taken over by humans. And the larger Gorn ship just blows it the hell up because that's who they are. That's the Gorn move. Not like, do you need backup?
Now, Joe here makes an interesting point. He says, I guess Spock got a lot more reluctant to do a mind meld under Kirk. I have a theory about that because I know there are some people that say in TOS, the first time he does it, he says, I know it's a great lowering of your personal, space and whatever. And they do make it seem like it was not something that was done all the time, willy-nilly, but it's possible that this might be the reason why.
Could be.
Because Spock does the mind meld.
Yes.
And he goes into her mind and he's helping her walk through this to find the memory that she's trying to find. But then he starts to think of loss in his life as well. Yeah. And they both come out of it and they're both in tears.
Yeah.
So maybe this is part of the reason why Spock doesn't want to do it all the time.
Possibly.
Because this experience happened to him as a young man. So,
and also she recognized that you had a sister, but your files don't. He's like, no, they do not.
Yeah.
Like he's like, basically, she's like, get the impression she wants to ask more questions. You'd be curious,
right?
And he says, I believe it is time to leave this mind meld, because he's like, partially because of regulation, because he can't discuss it, and that's got to be heavy. The only people can discuss it with is Pike and Number One, because they're the only ones who really were there that he could discuss it with.
Right.
And he's also a Vulcan, so a bit on the stoic side. So now back in the cargo bay, I believe I'm going to call it a cooling system. This large gizmo. It's been repaired, and they discuss the Anar, who are the subspecies of Andorians. She's like, well, I thought you were a pacifist, And he's like, that's an excellent point. This is from Joan Townsend again. I think that's an excellent point, Chris. Also, look how distraught he was after forcibly melding Valeris. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like everybody get naked, like emotionally. That is, it's a very intimate place to put yourself. So, so they're discussing the ideas. Like she's like, well, you're a pacifist. He says, I will not fight for Starfleet, but will defend its ideals. The idea that pacifism. This show is smooth as silk. Yeah. Pacifism is not passivity. I love that.
I love that line. Yeah.
And also it's about defending the right that all life is sacred, which I think what a great Star Trek message and a great, it's a good explanation of why somebody who is inherently a pacifist would serve in Starfleet.
Right. Now, Leo, I just want to jump in and ask your opinion. It is 1 minute to 9. Do you want to just run over?
Well, we're going to run a little late tonight.
Yeah, okay. Just saying, we're going to run along tonight, guys, because we've just been having too much fun. So,
yes. So they realized, like, oh, Coley system isn't repaired. There's something was damaged in it. It could not be repaired. And Hemmer says, well, what we really need to do is blow out this cargo bay.
Right.
So everything gets flown out into space. And Ahora says, well, that's us too. He's like, well, yeah. And
yeah,
it's an AP 350, whatever that is. So they decide because up on the bridge they were like, well, we got, and we also see Hemmer and her talking to them on the bridge. They're like, listen, we got to do this. And they're like, are there vac suits in the cargo? They were like, yeah. He's like, why? Be like, you might want to put them on.
Right.
So they decide, okay, we're losing all our cover and it's going to disappear in a moment. And we're, so they talk about doing a slingshot around the black hole. And there's a redshift, which, and Craig, if you're still watching, you can vouch for the authenticity of this. It will look like the Enterprise is, even though they move beyond, the image will be static. I don't understand the physics of this. I'm going to assume it's right.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
So what they're going to do is and then drop the AP-30 cooling system, and that'll explode once it goes out, and they'll think that the ship has been destroyed. It's been blown up. Gravitational redshift, is that a thing? I believe it is. Thank you. That is a line from the show and also from Keith Jacobson.
Google it.
Fan of the show. As they're getting ready, Ahora and Hemmer are talking and about his belief system, and she's like, "The Ahora believe that you may only die when you've fulfilled your purpose. And his is to fix what is broken." And she's like, and he said, "What do you think your purpose is?" She's like, "Well, I don't know yet. Does that mean that I'm not going to die?" He says, "It's one way to find out." You know. So they put on their suits and they've strapped themselves to some sort of loops onto the bulkhead. Mm-hmm. So when they do this, they'll be secured. Mm-hmm. And so Ortegas is about to do the move, and she's like, "Well, if this works, we have to call it the Pike maneuver." A nod to the Picard maneuver. Yeah. I'm assuming there's a lot of maneuvers in Starfleet. The captain.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and
well, we know from some later incarnation that there's a Sulu maneuver.
Yeah.
I forget what movie that. I think it's on a movie. I think.
If any of our fans know, please pipe up.
But I know there is a Sulu maneuver. Yeah.
You know, the captain gives a great speech. It'd be like, "Don't back down. Don't give in to fear."
You wanted the lumen touch. Yes. Here.
It would occur, but only if they got dangerously close to Singularity's event horizon. That seemed to be. They said, "Get us as close to the event horizon as you can."
Yeah.
So,
and the interesting thing about this is that for whatever, we know why. We know why. I just answered my own question.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Pike keeps saying, "I trust Enterprise."
Yeah.
No Enterprises will get us through.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. But that's not because he has some tremendous trust in the ship. It's because he knows that, correct? I mean, he survives that to go on and have the terrible end to his life. So he's got that ace in the hole. He knows he can push it.
He's got some plot armor, as they say.
Yeah. Right.
So they do it, and it and then you see that, and you see her and Hemmer like, they're being buffeted.
They hold hands too, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, I guess that must be his good hand.
Yes.
Otherwise, he wouldn't be screaming. But yeah, that's.
But also, he said basically, "I'm going to give you high marks for today for your,
Right.
And she said, "Well, that's great. I hope it makes a difference."
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And then they go into the discussion of, you don't die until your purpose in life is fulfilled.
Yeah.
It was a nice moment they had, because he was fairly surly throughout most of this episode, but I think at the end he was like, "Yeah, you're a good officer."
You could see him getting more and more impressed with her as she went along, even in his gratchy, grumpy way.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So they do that. They dump the AP-350. It explodes, and the Gorn see it, and they're like, "It just flies me to hell with this." Yeah. And a moment later, the Enterprise comes out battered but still whole.
Right.
And it worked. And then, so they're doing that, and they're like, okay, they're trying to contact the cargo bay, and they're having trouble. It's really staticky, and everybody's like, everybody's like,
yeah, they all assume they're gone.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh my god, did we lose it?" And then they're like, "No, we're fine, we're okay."
Yeah,
and everybody's visibly relieved.
Yes.
Which is, again, I love that. I love the idea that they care about each other. There's a crew that cares. Right. It's not just like, usually in a movie like that, people are like, they just applaud, like in that very, I mean, it's not. I don't want to say an insincere way because you could applaud and be that.
Right. Yeah, no.
But they all look like you just found out. Like you thought, your wife, it was like something had happened to a dear friend, and then you find out, oh, they're okay. And you're like, oh,
yeah.
Ortega's, you can see her visibly relieved by that.
Yes.
And Pike is very much, Pike you feel like Pike, he could take it, but I don't think he doesn't want to lose more crew today. Modern Trek versus TOS. Old Timer Trek would have never ended episode with a phew, thank goodness we escaped the bad guys. No. You what?
No, well, no, they would have ended it with a big chuckle.
It would have ended with an artificial like, well, I guess we show them, or a grim like, well, is it?
I sell him to the Klingons, Captain.
Yeah,
where there'll be no trouble at all.
Or be like
my terrible Scottish accent.
And then another time or place, I believe we could have been friends.
Yes.
A lot of TOS episodes end on a kind of a sort of a somber note. It's not unsomber, but it feels like there's a sense of relief. They've come through this really dangerous one. They talk about the price of exploration is sometimes it's dangerous. I prefer this new Trek. It's incredibly potentious. I'm not sure that's the word I would use, but I'm not going to yuck your yum, John. John what else? My notes.
I don't think there's much more, is there?
Just a little bit. Lan is like, she's like, well, he's like, well, we it worked. We're safe. And she's like, well, they're expanding their hunting grounds. And she's like, well, what are we going to do if next time we find it? He's like, well, next time we won't be unprepared. We'll be ready for them. Respect my freaky. I do respect your freaky John Weber. I always will. You fly your freak flag as high as you like, sir. Yeah. So number one is we find out they've done the surgery and she has an IV also that she's like, we're gonna have to do an IV, which is she's like, what? Like, I guess blood transfusions are not done that way in the 23rd century, but she's got an IV linked directly to Dr. Mbenga. I love your show, guys. Thank you. We love you too, John.
We do, John.
And Mbenga has given her a transfusion, which was a lovely little touch, a little, moment. Right. And Lan finally wears her pin. She puts on her Puget Sound pin. She's clearly, still processing all this stuff.
Right.
But it really, it felt like a nice moment. And then we get to see Pike is like, they lost 7 crew members, during this thing. Yeah. And they lost like 3 people who'd come aboard, refugees. And you can tell it weighs on him. And, Lan, he's like, but we're here. We've survived it. We've made through.
And it was interesting because where was he viewing them? He was viewing them in the cargo bay.
Yeah.
Which says to me, and they were all draped with, Federation flags.
Yeah.
But that says to me that they're bringing them home.
I think so, yeah.
That they're not shooting them out in space like they do later on, or like a sea burial at sea. They're going to bring those guys home. And I think that's an interesting difference because we've seen people previously have this, sort of romantic burial at sea thing.
Yeah.
In other episodes where somebody's died that was important to the episode. So I thought that was interesting.
It was. I would say I love this episode. It felt so Star Trek. Great Memorial Day.
Got it. Angela has it. Yeah, that's true. Very true.
The stakes were high, and even though your characters have plot armor to a certain extent, there were moments of like genuine peril, and you with it. There were some of the music. There were little musical bits that felt very much like TOS music. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a musician, so I can't exactly pinpoint it. But occasionally a few notes would creep in. And you're like, oh, that's yeah, all right, that's good. I like that. It wasn't very much like, damn, I didn't catch that. Well, you have to rewatch it.
I think he's talking about the idea that it was a Memorial Day episode. Yeah,
I didn't catch that either. That's all Angela.
I didn't think of it either, but that was a terrific point.
It worked out very well, if that was their intent. This was
That's a great segue for me, Leo.
Yeah.
Angela made that fantastic point, and it proves why last week she won Fan of the Week.
Yay!
Yay! Fan of the Week. And as a token of our appreciation, you will then get the new Trek Tonight pin.
Yes.
Which you would also get as a Patreon subscriber. And since both Keith and Angela are Patreon subscribers, they're going to get these pins. Probably should send them two.
Yeah.
Because they won for Fan of the Week and they got that for being a Patreon person. So she says, I'm not worthy. Yes, you are. You had a lot of great points last week.
Yes.
And we have a congratulations for you.
From Joe
Angela says woohoo.
Yeah.
We're gonna send these suckers out today somehow or other. I don't know, Leah. Do you? We need an address. That's what we know to say.
We'll get that. We'll get that to you.
Yeah, we'll get that at some other point. But yeah, that's great.
Don't put your home address on the screen.
Yeah. Type it right in the comments. There you go.
Put your social security number and
safety first. Yeah. The guys who keep trying to scam me on this programs, claiming that they're from Facebook, saying that our program is going to get shut down because we have multiple violations of the TOS and all sorts of things. And John, I know you're watching. I sympathize with you now. Not that I didn't before, but
everybody's looking to work an angle. So
yeah,
Leo, Chris, remember Bill said, yeah, we should. Well,
matter of fact, I should put mine on here because this is my sinking ship right here.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where. So I want to remember it while it's still fresh.
Much like a lot of the stuff like 2 weeks ago, those jackets, those very cool jackets the landing party was wearing.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in the show.
I want all of this merch.
I just picked up a file. I'm starting to learn how to 3D print, and I picked up a file that is the new tricorder that somebody designed, and I can 3D print, and it'll be really exciting. So we'll see how that comes out. I'm being waved at. What are you doing? Going to bed? Yeah. Okay. Good night, honey. My daughter, Charlotte.
So I think that's about it. I mean, any other closing thoughts? I love this episode.
Me too.
Everybody got cool moments. Everybody got good lot. They were firing on all cylinders. Everybody got to do at least one, if not multiple, cool things.
Yeah, and I'm just loving how well, you may have characters that come back. I mean, we've seen a lot more of Ahora than we've ever seen on Star Trek.
Yes.
But this episode was basically a Lan episode.
Yeah.
And so the main thread seems to be a story for each character to develop them further and for us to get to know them better. I think that's really cool.
I think it's good. That was a thing that was lacking from the old TOS, for all my love of TOS, and I have a deep and abiding love.
Right.
To quote a very popular Star Trek podcast, it was the best friends group, which is Perk. Walker McCoy, the best friends gang, because they got the lion's share of the screen time.
Yeah,
and,
right.
We got a little bit of Scotty stuff, and Chekhov got a lot more stuff than for a guy who came in the second season.
Right.
We had very little about Ahura, very little about Sulu, and there would or Chapel, other than Roger Corby and her Miss Lonely Hearts. I really like this new Chapel.
I do too.
Yeah.
Keith Jacob says, I know I keep praising Hemmer, but all of these characters are great, and I love watching them have fun exploring space.
Yeah.
I stand by my claim that this is the best Trek. Well,
there you go.
That is, like I said, he's a bold man on the internet saying that. But yeah, I've loved this show. I think it's fantastic. I'm really glad to have it.
There hasn't been an episode that I have not adored.
Right. And I know that there was a lot of back and forth, people hating this and hating that and so on and so forth. But I just don't remember where I was going with that.
No. I listen, any weird inconsistencies, little stuff, like who cares? It's a
right.
These are really
right.
Stories.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
We are not being paid by Paramount Plus,
right?
Unless they would like to,
or the fine people at Wawa.
Well, yes.
Yeah. I didn't do a sponsor this week, but
we will.
We'll bring the back next week. Because next week is Spock Amok. Am I correct?
Yes.
And with that episode, we have our very good friend Joe Townsell, who's been a big commenter tonight. Joe Townsell will be our special guest for what will be our episode 8, which will be episode 5 of Strange New World. We should probably just reboot that. I don't know, but
second season we'll change.
Yes, that's season 2. We'll do it differently. Yeah, and that should be a lot of fun. I think we're going to see some neat stuff with Spock and get a little more Vulcan. And Joe says he can't wait. We can't wait either, Joe, because I miss you, buddy. We haven't seen you in a while because John Weber's doesn't have a show running that we're doing right now. We're working on something new with John. But because Picard ended, I just don't see Joe every week. I used to see Joe every week on that show. So yeah, we miss you, buddy. And
you're a very you're almost scholarly guest.
Yes, exactly. In
the best way. I think that's about it.
I think that is about it. We've gone 17 minutes over, but hopefully it was entertaining. At least it was to me. I don't know.
We had we had again. As I'm going to say at the end of every episode, please follow us on Facebook at Trek Tonight, Twitter at Trek Tonight. Subscribe and like us on YouTube, Trek Tonight. And if you want to contact us directly with any questions, please do. We'd be happy to answer any fan mail or fan hate mail. Well, maybe not so much the last one. You take what you can get. You flatter me. We miss you too. Says
we really do.
Please email us at trektonight2022@gmail.com.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate it.
I think that's it.
Are we ready to call up the closing sequence?
I think we are.
Second.
Let the dancing begin.
Let the dancing begin.